All right, welcome to Talking Television. Today we're talking about episode 5 of Warrior. Title is The Blood and the Shit. Just finished watching a little bit ago, and can't wait to dig into it.
Yeah, this was definitely, I think, my favorite episode by far, just because the tone and the scenery, and it was so different.
Yeah, it was a lot different than the first 4. Before we dive into the episode, should we talk about what we're drinking tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those of you that don't know, which most of you don't, yesterday was Jay's birthday.
Yes, it was.
So this is a birthday bottle for him.
It is The Burning Chair, bottled by Savage and Cook. We're on glass 2 of the evening, and it's sweeter, I'd say. Got some butterscotch tones, a little fruity at the end.
Yeah, a little caramel.
Yeah.
We tried it just straight up on ice, and then with a little bit of a mixer here, and I think it's good all the way around.
It is.
Yep.
Recommend it.
Definitely a sweeter whiskey, so if you don't like those, you may want to skip it or try a different flavor from them, but I personally like sweet whiskey, so it's all good with me.
The less the burn, the better.
I guess that's what happens when you get old.
Yep. So, right. Where do we start on episode 5?
Well, let's start with the title, The Blood and the Shit. So they reference this name when they're in the carriage towards the beginning, just talking about, getting back to the city would be getting back to the blood and the shit. So it seems like they both know they're gonna, when they get back into town, it's, just gonna be straight back to the grind. They're gonna be working, hustling.
Yeah, it's almost a little refreshing that they're kind of going on their own little vacation.
Yeah, a little bit mini vacation for them.
If you can call it that. It didn't end up being that way, but...
No, but they did come back with some sweet souvenirs, some nice little cowboy hats.
Yep. We see them in the carriage, and it starts off with the upper-class white folk sitting opposite of them, just talking mad shit.
Yeah, they're talking a lot of shit about them.
Yeah, and it's understood that they can't, understand them. They're speaking in English. These are Chinese. They have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, the editor did some, cool work, inside of this little carriage where, they're talking shit or whatever, and then they do a quick cut over to their other face, and Yong Jun and Assam are kind of looking at him like, what the fuck, guys?
Yep.
But obviously they didn't let on at that time that, they understood English.
And then, obviously Yong Jun doesn't speak English, so you kind of wonder exactly how much he knew. He could probably pick up on the undertones.
The tones of it.
They're not complimenting us for any means. And he knows a couple swear words, and we find that out later. But Assam, he can understand everything, and he's just sitting there biting his tongue, being like...
And the only one that was nice to him was the preacher man.
The preacher, he plays a part, throughout the whole episode, and he was kind of the, soothing voice. He's saying, they're people. Don't treat them like that. Just let them be, yeah.
Which is kind of funny when they get out to, they're on a carriage ride out to Nevada. And when they get out there, there's other, mixed race couples and other stuff going on out there that we didn't see in San Francisco at all. Yeah,
it's frowned upon in the big city. But out there, the cook, we find out he's Chinese. It's his establishment, and he's, with a white woman.
Yeah, his name was Lou. I think that was played by C.S. Lee.
Yep.
And you know him from another show.
Yeah, he was in Dexter for years, along with some other big shows. But yeah, I recognized him as soon as he was on screen.
Yeah, he had a great role in this episode. I enjoyed it a lot, and hopefully he comes back either, maybe next season or something.
He chatted with Assam a little bit in Chinese about China, where they're from, their hometowns, how they were close to each other. And Yong Jun, after that conversation, he kind of confides that to Assam that, I'm Chinese, but I've never been to China. And I'm born in America, but I'm not an American.
Yeah, he's
kind of in the middle, and he can't relate 100% with either side.
Yeah, he felt kind of lost. You could see it on his face where he's just kind of, I guess, was in a depressive kind of moment. And
yeah,
he didn't really know where he fits in. And we already know that the relationship with him and his father isn't the best. And his father is actually closer with Bolo than he is with him.
From what we can gather, is going to play a bit of a role later on. What exactly it's going to be, we don't know yet.
And maybe that's why, he's bonding so well with Assam is, he doesn't feel that he fits in anywhere else. So...
Yeah, this episode was all about their relationship, building it up, almost becoming, the bromance episode. Rich kind of coined that earlier. Rich Ting. We were listening to Warrior After Dark. If you guys haven't checked that out yet, after each episode, he's on Instagram going live.
Yeah, that's both after the Eastern Time and Western Time
Yep.
episode. So
we've been chatting with him for the past couple weeks, getting a little bit behind the scenes, some of his take on the story.
it's fun, informative. So if you guys are interested, check them out.
So yeah, this was the bromance episode, all about building the relationship, the brotherhood bond between Assam and Yong Jun. And they, from start to finish, you can tell it got a lot stronger.
Definitely.
He had the chance at one point to leave and run away with a love that he came across at the saloon, but he chose to stay and stick by Assam.
Yeah, that definitely shows a lot that he decided, you felt he would be dishonoring or disrespecting not only leaving Assam behind, but just everybody else there. He'd be running away from a fight, which isn't really in him. So it showed a lot of character building with him.
So speaking about fighting, there was quite a bit.
Oh yeah, this was a great episode for action because we had almost none last week.
Yep, we called it 1.5 fights last week, and then I don't even know how many to count, but there was quite a few.
And each one was numerous people, it wasn't just one-on-one. So, did you have any favorite either fights or action scenes in it?
I'd say 2 parts. The first one was unexpected. It was after the conversation with the Chinese cook. They get to know him. There's somebody that was in the carriage ride with him, a white gentleman. They really didn't give him a name or a purpose. He was just a prick, pretty much. He kept insulting them. He insulted the Native American girl at the saloon. He didn't want anything to do with her. He comes down and Yong Jun's at the bar getting a drink and pushes him, insults him, and that leads to a little bit of a scuffle. So out of nowhere, as he's about to have an altercation with the two of them, he gets his head blown off, just straight up dead.
Yeah, it
wasn't expecting that, and I thought that was pretty cool. The cowboys come in, the robbers, and start talking smooth talk, like, hey, you couldn't just leave your stuff in the carriage and we'd be out of here.
We could have just robbed you out there.
Now you made it difficult, so start handing it over. I'd say I like that part. That was kind of unexpected and pretty violent for the show. The second part was when they returned later and the whole group shows up. Assam's just sitting in the lobby. He's the welcoming party.
Yep. Solo by himself.
Yeah, solo by himself. The rest of the group's hiding somewhere. But he just doesn't back down, tells the guy, it's probably time you should leave because I'm going to kill you now if you don't. And what does he do? He just uses his bare hands and rips out his throat.
Yeah,
that's the end of him.
It was completely brutal. And it really reminded me on Banshee of the Nola and Burton fight, which was one of the best fights of the show. It was a 10-minute or so long battle between the two of them, and then it gets to the end, and Burton just reaches in, grabs her by the throat, and just rips her throat and her tongue out. And yeah, as soon as I saw this, I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's a nod right back to that.
Well, we know Jonathan Tropper, he's very descriptive in his fight sequences.
Yep.
So I wonder how detailed he was. If that was something strictly from him, or maybe the coordinator came up with it. And
I think that would have to come from him because I don't think they would care about that kind of detail.
Yeah. So, with him doing Banshee and now Warrior, that's maybe his little go-to, finishing move.
I think my favorite fight scenes in this were all the blade action. So we got to see him pull out the hatchets and kill a couple guys. We saw some really awesome knife work by Yong Jun.
Oh yeah, he's always giving it to him.
Yep. Probably my least favorite part in this episode was a similar nod to Lee a couple episodes ago, where they open up the body. They're trying to figure out why the robbers are trying to get this, and they're digging around in the body. You have all the sound effects of the fluids and the blood and everything, and reminds me of when Lee was digging around in the intestines.
Yeah, they didn't show it a whole lot, but the sound effects were pretty intense. You could tell what was going on in there.
They could leave that out on the next time.
Speaking of that, what did they pull out when he was digging around in there?
A nice bag of gold.
And I guess it's never answered how Assam decided to look in the body in that location. Maybe he had a hint that, hey, there's probably a reason we're doing this. Why else would we be, transporting this body? But Yong Jun had no idea. He wasn't expecting a whole bag of gold to be pulled out of this corpse. Mm-hmm. So that leads to the question, why are the Hopway transporting, gold?
And who are they transporting it to? And, Rich told us that he thought it was, a decent-sized shipment, but if it was a bigger gold shipment, they would have more muscle there, and he thinks Bolo would be on site to, help transport it, but he wasn't. So maybe this is just a smaller duty for the, the younger guys, not the big guys.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a, test mission for Yong Jun just to see how he handled it. Mm-hmm. And I guess maybe it's on a need-to-know basis. It's kind of hard to say that since he's, Father Jun's son. But who does he trust? Does he trust Yong Jun to know about this and handle it? Or is he kind of wanting Assam to step up a little bit? Mm-hmm. I guess we'll see how that plays out.
So, just a basic description of this episode is, they leave San Francisco. They're on a carriage ride, headed out east to Nevada. And it's really just a nod to the old Westerns. But they kind of threw in a twist and decided not to use some of the old tropes of, the Chinese were just, slaves or servants or, didn't speak English and, really abused in a lot of these other TV shows or movies you've seen them in. But here, they were their normal dramatic actor selves.
Right.
And their normal roles. And I think it was really refreshing to see in that kind of environment. And they had some great cinematography. I think that blew me away right away.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It was overall a much brighter episode.
Yes, definitely.
Except for the final fight sequence. That was pretty dark at nighttime in the saloon. But overall, it was brighter. It had a totally different feel. In fact, the music choice in this episode was quite unique.
Very.
The first fight sequence had quite a bit of a Western feel to it, kind of what you'd expect in a cowboy shoot-'em-up movie.
Yep.
But the second one, the all-out fight, had some, metal, some hard rock and roll music.
I was, ready to headbang.
Right? So it's interesting, how they pick their music for these different... Because we've heard funk music, we've heard hip-hop, rock now, Western. They're really switching it up.
And when we got to the credits, we went back to our normal, Chinese rap, hip-hop song, which felt really out of place after the ending when they kind of ride off into the sunset. So.
Yep. And then they had the end on the screen, also with the Chinese lettering.
Yeah, nice little throwback.
Kind of like it was its own little separate short film.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like an excerpt of the season, and then we're going to go right back in.
Right back into San Francisco to the Tang Wars, kind of where everything left off. So it was a refreshing change from, what we've seen. But
so the environment, it looked like a typical American Western, but we know it was filmed in South Africa.
Yep.
And we actually asked Rich if this scene was filmed in South Africa because just the impact and the look of it was totally different. He said, yeah, it was. So that's cool.
Yeah, he said the whole season was shot there.
Mm-hmm. So they must have all sorts of Mediterranean and desert and.
I think that's what he said. It's a very rich environment. Any kind of landscape or scene that they need to shoot, there's a spot for it there. Sounds like a really cool place to go.
Speaking of which, so we found out last week that they're already shooting season 2.
Yes.
So, we just found out on episode 3 that it was renewed, and they were already had filming underway. So they must have had a lot of positive test screenings and stuff before the season started and decided to just roll with it.
And that means the scripts have been written for a while and they've had approval. So
I looked at the ratings again. Mm-hmm. Episode 4 was almost identical to episode 3. So the only episode that had been low was episode 2. So maybe there was a conflict that night. It just didn't have a lot of numbers.
Yep. It just could have been, talk. Mm-hmm. The pilot's one thing. It's always a little different than the overall feel of the show. Had a little drop and then people picked it back up.
I'm hoping this episode the numbers will jump back up because it seems like there's a lot of people that had seen the preview and were really, excited to watch this episode with the Western feel.
Especially since it was so different. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to, update everybody on what the ratings are for episode 5.
So not only did this have the the throat ripping out that kind of reminded us of Banshee, but the fact that it was a kind of a solo episode out on its own. Banshee did that a few times too, and since Jonathan Tropper wrote both, it really kind of gave me that similar feel to Banshee. I hate to keep comparing the two, but we're not comparing it to a bad show. I mean, Banshee is my favorite show I think of all time.
Yep.
So the fact that Warrior's living right up there with it is fantastic, and hopefully we'll get a couple great seasons out of this too.
Exactly. JT, he's got a way of doing things, and it's a good way, but there's similarities between the two. With that being said, it's also its own show in so many different ways. Adapting it from Bruce Lee's original writings, I'm sure it was very difficult to pay homage to the original, but make it modern,
Modernize it. Yep.
and then give it your own personal flair, as you would in an original show. I'm sure it's very difficult, but I think halfway through the season, it shows that they did a good job.
Definitely. So when they get to the bar, which kind of reminded us of Hateful Eight,
It did.
they were inside a bar, and there's a lot of different camera angles set up, so it must have been a pretty big set piece or location wherever they were at. But yeah, it really reminded me of Hateful Eight, and there's a lot of cool shots that they had in there. But I think the biggest thing was we got a lot of character building and bromance between Assam and Yong Jun. But especially Assam and Lou said that they actually grew up right by each other, and they used to go play in the waterfalls on the same mountain and everything. Mm-hmm. And I think that was kind of rubbing it in the wounds for Yong Jun that he doesn't have that. He said he's never been to China or anything.
Like we said before, he's not 100% Chinese, he's not 100% American. The girl he meets at the saloon, she's Native American, and without speaking the same language, being able to communicate, he says he fell in love, and they have a really strong connection. He doesn't end up running away with her, before the fight, or leaving with her at the end of the episode, but you can tell he's searching for something like that, a connection on a different level that his Hopway, aren't fulfilling.
Yeah, and the two of them, they had a sex scene together, and it wasn't really like they were fucking. They were, were pretty intense with each other.
Yeah, it wasn't your typical, prostitute.
And the Hopway live in a brothel at
right.
Toys, which we actually found out by talking to Olivia Chang that there is no name for Toys. It's just Toys place. Yep. So,
hey, maybe season 2 they'll have a name for it.
Yeah, if so, send us a royalty check. We'll love it. Or name it Jay and Chris's.
We'll work on that.
Yeah. But there was a joke in there from Yong Jun, which really not politically correct, but it definitely kind of fit in with the feel of his character, where Assam's like, hey, she's Native American, you're Chinese, you guys can't even talk to each other, and he goes, I know, it's perfect. Which still kind of shows his mentality. He's definitely got the younger mindset. I don't think he's ready to settle down, but maybe he's ready to have somebody that understands him more.
Exactly. So another big thing that happened this episode,
which you called, by the way.
Yeah.
And I really had to think about it, and I didn't know the answer.
Assam's kind of revealed to various people throughout the season, the fact that he speaks English. Mm-hmm. In episode 1, it came out, and Chow basically said, hey, you should keep that to yourself. That can get you into some trouble.
Especially when you're around other Chinese.
Exactly. So, yeah, before, or actually after the first fight sequence, he speaks English to the people in the saloon.
And they all look totally astonished.
Yeah, everybody was shocked, but who was really shocked was Yong Jun.
Yeah,
Yong Jun was standing behind him, and you could just see his facial expressions, like, looking at him, like a little child, like, wait a minute.
He's like, what the fuck?
You speak English? So that was really shocking to him, and, he's like, oh, you have to tell me, like, how you know that, because I'm really curious.
Uh-huh.
So a little later on, before the main battle, he breaks it down, like, my grandfather was American, so I guess I'm a quarter American.
Mm-hmm.
And
also a quarter onion, right?
Yep, quarter onion.
Yep.
So that's kind of how it comes to be, but he was really taken aback, and I don't know, maybe he'll pick up a few things from him, but that was something that you could kind of didn't know if he realized it yet, or how many people he's going to tell about that.
So the last episode, the two of them were sitting kind of side by side, chit chatting, and you see them, we see them, talking in English sometimes. And I guess, yeah, I hadn't, made the connection that the two of them hadn't actually been speaking real English, just English for us as the viewers to see.
Right. Yeah. The first sequence in the stagecoach was really, with the editing, whoever's point of view it was, they showed, the English subtitles, meaning they were speaking in Chinese, or then it would switch right back to them, the two of them on screen, and it was back to English.
You know what? They had great camera work in that stagecoach.
Yes.
So I'm guessing, they probably had a stagecoach, and then they probably had a different one that was kind of an exploded view where they could do side by side. But whoever did the editing and the camera work in there did a great job, and it really looked different than anything else on there.
We mentioned it in the very first episode, is how that was one of our favorite things, is how they distinguished between, okay, they're actually speaking Chinese, but instead of having to, put subtitles on, from their point of view, you're going to understand them in English. So we got a throwback to that this episode. I don't think they did that last episode at all.
I don't think so either, but yeah, I mean, the camera work almost reminded me kind of like a Wes Anderson film, with the low camera angles and things like that. It was super cool. So I think this is going to be definitely a very memorable episode when the season's over.
Yeah, I guess episode 6 is going to be a pretty big one too.
It's Rich Ting's favorite, he says, and he kept repeating it over and over and over.
So
what did we see in the preview?
Well, there's a bomb that went off in the city,
and
it just was chaos. Bill was kind of wandering around looking kind of confused.
I think the Tong Wars are finally going to kick off in the next episode, and it sounds like there's going to be a lot of battles if he's excited for it.
So there's 3 Tongs, which it sounds like they're capping it at 3 this year. And
yeah, they said no more this year.
This year.
But they didn't say whether we're going to see any more next year.
So, we'll see what episode 10 brings. I'm assuming it's going to be a pretty good cliffhanger. They'll leave, it open-ended, obviously, for season 2. But the way it's set up now, it's 2-on-1. Hopway's going to be the underdog. And we'll see how that plays out. If they can overcome the other two and maybe make it just down to 1-on-1. But I think it's starting. Next episode.
Yeah, Rich said he didn't say the season was going to end in a cliffhanger, but he did say it was going to leave off, us wanting more. So I'm super excited to see where that's going to leave us. And yeah, maybe it's going to be some other Tong, comes down from a different part of the city and they're going to throw down or something.
Yep. Also, maybe some more guest appearances.
Yes, that would be awesome.
Yeah. We'll have to see if anything like that happens.
Yeah, so Rich said he actually, when they're filming, they don't know the guest stars before the day. So sometimes he would just show up and look over and go, oh, wow, you're in this episode. And, they had no idea beforehand. So I don't know if they'll keep that same, mystery next year.
Yep.
But, with working so remotely in South Africa, I think, you're juggling schedules for everybody. And I don't know if it's something you can line up all the time.
We'll see what episode or season 2 brings. It sounds like quite a few of the main cast members are shooting right now. So
yeah, they're shooting in South Africa, and so we made a couple predictions early in the season about whether we were going to see some people die or not. So far, we haven't seen any main cast members die, or really any small cast members die. So I'm curious. Maybe next episode.
I think we're on the way up to the pinnacle. So I think there's going to be a couple coming up soon. I still think the mayor's going to die.
Well, we've heard.
That's what I think.
We've heard the mayor. A couple of people said Richard Lee. A couple of people said Yong Jun. If I picked anybody, I would definitely say the mayor. I think we're on the same level there, and we'll see what happens.
And maybe Bill. Bill might get it at some point. He's got a couple gambling debts he has to pay off in a couple weeks' time. So
yeah, 3 weeks. So we don't know how much time has passed on this road trip. But
yeah, he better start making some money.
I'd imagine it's going to be at least week and a half, 2 weeks at minimum by the time they get back. Going from California to Nevada.
He doesn't want to join the White Mountains, so
yeah, maybe he'll go back to Otoys, get another payoff. But I mean, it was only $30. That's not a whole lot to pay back. How much did he borrow? We know he borrowed.
I believe it was 50.
But
it sounds like he's got some other debts though.
Yes.
We know he owes some money to Leary.
And then he was at another casino at the end of episode 4. Yep.
So he's racking up some debts, and
He might just want to leave town. Maybe he'll go back where Lee came from, because Lee's running from somebody, and he came to San Francisco.
exactly. Well, time will tell. We'll have to see what next episode has.
Let's talk about the channel. So far, I think you and I have been really happy with the response we've gotten.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all for listening
and watching.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I think this took off a lot faster than we expected. So Jay and I have been working on setting up a schedule for new shows. Obviously, this season's only going to be 10 episodes, and Game of Thrones only has 6 this season. So we have
we're basically halfway through each one now.
Yes.
Each season.
Yep, definitely. So we have a few new shows on the docket. We're not going to reveal what those are yet, but if you're curious, you want to get in early and find out what they are, find us on Patreon. And, our username there, just like everywhere else, is at Southport Media. And we're sharing content there before you'll see it anywhere else. And, as little as $1 a month will help support us. And if you want to help support us with even more, we appreciate it very much.
Exactly. Like Chris said, anything helps. We're working on a couple things in the near future, a couple things in the not so distant future. So it's exciting.
Yeah, not just new content.
We'll have to see how many shows at once we can do.
How many we can juggle at once?
There's so many good shows out there. It's hard to pick what to focus on. And there's definitely more shows we're watching, than what we're doing the podcast on.
Definitely.
So, if there's any recommendations you guys have, please comment. Let us know.
Yeah, find us on Twitter, Instagram. Send us a message.
We'll do our best to find a way to review that and do a podcast and get an episode or a few out on it. But yeah, there's more to come. So stay tuned and like and subscribe. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
And if you want to hear from a woman's point of view, we're working on trying to get some women on the show to sit in with us as guest stars. So I think that'll be, a big change, and hopefully we'll pick up.
We'll have to get the wives on.
Yeah, hopefully.
So look forward to that. We're working on it.
Yeah, if you guys want to hear from them, send us a message or a couple likes, and we'll pass it along to them. Thanks for joining us, guys. By the way, this whiskey is delicious, so I think we're going to have this bottle gone very quickly.
Yeah, we'll have to showcase it a couple more times.
Yeah. All right, guys. Cheers.
Well,
Thanks for sitting with us.
Thanks. Have a good one.